working, and any second now I should be appearing on my laptop, I think. No, I'm still not there. Can anyone see me? Say hi if you can see me. Oh, I think I'm coming up now. There I am. Although things are flipped. I'm not sure. Yeah, it looks like I'm in the opposite direction this time. God knows why. But hello. So let me shut that down. Welcome to this week's live stream, where we will be talking about episode 4 of Doctor Who Series 11, Arachnids in the UK. So, as per usual, message away your thoughts on the episode, and also in the corner, which is usually that corner, but it's probably this corner now, under the eye. I've got a bunch of polls for you guys to answer if you want to. So we've got questions like, how do you rate the episode? How does it compare to the other episodes of Series 11? Which is your favourite villain of Series 11 so far? And I think, I'm not sure if I saved this extra question or not before I started this. But I think I also put a poll question on there for how scary did you find the episode. So I think there's 4 or 5 questions in the little eye in one of these corners. So by all means, answer it. Yeah, so I'll quickly turn the chat off, because I just very briefly want to say my immediate reaction to the episode. I'm not necessarily going to cover everything that's on my usual things I liked, things I disliked list straight away. I'll gradually bring them in. I won't do it all now. But in a nutshell, I liked the episode. But just like with the other Chris Chibnall episodes this series, so episodes 1 and 2, I feel like something's missing. And I'm really struggling to put my finger on what it is exactly. I think it's the writing, and I feel like there isn't really, the plot isn't that engaging a lot of the time. It's still decent, but it's not as exciting as it has been when we've had scripts from Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat. And so, yeah, coming out of Chris Chibnall episodes, I just have this weird feeling. But no, I did enjoy the episode. It was very creepy. It didn't quite scare me, but I was certainly creeped out. Especially with, well, first of all, how massive the spiders were. But then we also had the fact that they cocooned people in spider webs. That's just, no, don't want that to happen to me. And also the spider that came out the bath as well. I don't know about you guys, but I am never going to have a bath again after seeing that scene. Yeah, so it was very creepy, but not necessarily scary in my eyes. And yeah, I suppose that's my overall summary. As I said earlier, there are specifics, but hopefully the things that you guys are saying in the messages will link in nicely to them, and I'll bring them about that way. So let's have a look at what you're all saying. I'll start at the beginning. So yeah, actually that's something I should quickly point out. Sorry about the confusion with the start time. For any of you that aren't from the UK, basically the clocks went back in the UK this weekend, and I tried to take that into account. I did plan ahead and adjust the timing of when this was meant to start accordingly. But for some reason, YouTube still got it wrong. And so according to YouTube, this was meant to start an hour ago, but it didn't. So sorry if you tuned in an hour early. Right, so we don't need all that. TM Martin, hello Dr. Blue, how do you rate this week's episode up against 1974's Planet of the Spiders, when Pertwee's third Doctor had to deal with 8 legs, the race of alien arachnids from planet Metabilius or Metabilis 3. I'll be honest, TM Martin, I have actually yet to see that episode. It is on my list. I do really want to see it. I know it's a very famous episode and a very good episode and a very scary episode, but I haven't actually got round to watching it yet. So, yeah, let me know what you think of it, and the same goes for the rest of you watching. If you've seen Planet of the Spiders, I think that's actually one of the poll questions as well. Which is your favourite spider-based story? I think I was asking. So you've got this week's episode, you've got Planet of the Spiders, you've got The Runaway Bride, which had the Arachnids in it, you've got Kill the Moon. Am I missing one? I think it's just those 4. So yeah, vote for your favourite spider-based tale. Hayden 2012, I thought we were going to have a reference to that, but sadly no mention. But I thought it was good, however Classic Who is like a poison chalice. Interesting. Yeah, so I was hoping, even though I haven't seen Planet of the Spiders before, I was hoping we would at least get a reference to when the Doctor had encountered the spiders from Metabilius 3, or Metabilis. I really don't know how to pronounce that planet. But yeah, I thought at the very least, if it's not the same spiders, we would at least have a reference to them. But sadly we didn't. But that's only a minor thing, so we can't really fault the episode for that. Null Data, or Data. Hello there, I'm still feeling scared. That's fair enough. It was quite a creepy episode. And I think what certainly helped is the fact that we all encounter spiders in everyday life, and this was actually set on the planet Earth in present day England. So obviously this wouldn't, well, hopefully this would never happen in real life, encountering giant spiders, but we have all had our own encounters with spiders before that we claim are giant, when actually they're, I don't know, that size, which is still big. But yeah, no, so it's something we can all relate to, and a lot of people have arachnophobia, myself included, I think. It comes and goes with me. Sometimes I'm just completely frozen, and if I see a spider, I can't get close to it at all. I have to leave the room. And other times I actually manage to trap it in a jar or a glass and take it outside. But most of the time I am still scared when I'm taking it out. And I take it all the way to the other end of the garden and throw it as far away as possible in the hope that it doesn't come scurrying back into the house. But that's just what I do. Some people kill spiders, which is a bit harsh. I used to do that, I'm ashamed to say, but I try to be nice to them now. I believe in karma, so I like to think if I'm nice to the spiders, they'll be nice back to me. I'm yet to see if that works. I don't know. But yeah, that's how I am with spiders, basically. The angels have the phone box. Hello all, does anyone know what happened to the spiders that were left around Sheffield? Good point, I did not think of that. Yeah, it's not explained, is it? Well, my immediate reaction is that they were just left, which is quite bad to leave giant spiders running around Sheffield. I don't know, maybe the Doctor tracked them down off screen and dealt with them accordingly. Or maybe it's just a plot hole that Chris Chibnall didn't think about hard enough. Well done for spotting it, in any case. Dave H, I really liked the episode. Good to know. Don't forget to vote in the poll and say how you rated the episode. Actually, I'll do that myself now quickly. There's so many things to consider in these videos that I always forget that I like taking part in these polls as well. So for the first question, how do you rate Arachnids in the UK? I didn't love it. I didn't think it was a perfect episode. It definitely wasn't as good as last week's episode, Rosa. So for me, I think I'm going to say I liked it. It's still really weird seeing a delayed version of myself on my laptop that's a couple of seconds behind what I'm currently doing. Oh, it's weird, yeah. Which Series 11 episode is the best so far? It's got to be Rosa for me. It made me cry. It's one of the best historicals, if not the best historical we've ever had, in my opinion. And that's going to be a tough episode to beat throughout the rest of Series 11, I think. Which Series 11 enemy is the best so far? See, I feel like this is going to change for me week on week. I did like the giant spiders, but... Oh, this is actually one of the points I mentioned, well, was going to mention on my list. As much as I liked the spiders, I was kind of disappointed that they couldn't communicate with humans. Basically, the fact they couldn't talk. They were just beasts, maybe? Is that the best word for it? They were just normal spiders, essentially, but enlarged. Which is interesting, but in a way I would have liked maybe alien spiders that can actually communicate with people. So yeah, they're not my favourite enemy of the series. I think it's still got to be Tim Shaw for me. And then... Oh, okay, I didn't do the how scared of the episode were you question. So the final poll question is, which spider featuring story is your favourite? Obviously I can't vote for Planet of the Spiders because I haven't actually seen it yet. I like all the other episodes on there, The Runaway Bride, Kill the Moon and Arachnids in the UK. But I think it will probably have to be tonight's episode out of the bunch. Yeah, so that's how I voted. I'm going to quickly refresh the page to see if any of you guys have been voting on the polls, just to see how things stand at the moment. Okay, nice. Right. So 50% of people liked the episode, 35% thought it was okay, and 14% loved it. No one has disliked it or hated it so far, which is a good sign, but it's still early days. There may be someone that's just joined now that despised the episode, in which case vote in the poll wherever it is. That's like a dance, that. Which Series 11 episode is the best so far? Rosa is still winning with 57% of the vote. And, oh wow, in joint second place, we have the other 3 episodes of Series 11. The Woman Who Fell to Earth, The Ghost Monument, and Arachnids in the UK. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes over the coming hour or so. Which Series 11 enemy is the best so far? Most people are saying the spiders. 38% of people think the giant spiders. Then in second place it's Tim Shaw. Third place is Crasco. And in last place is the raggedy remnants from the Ghost Monument. And then finally, which spider featuring story is your favourite? 27% of people said Arachnids in the UK. 9% of people said Kill the Moon. But 63% of people have said The Runaway Bride. Interesting. That is a good Christmas special, to be fair. Okay, so I'm going to shut my laptop down for a bit because I want to pay attention to your messages. Examiku, were there any Easter eggs in today's episode? Let me just have a drink of my water and think about that. I mean, probably, but at the top of my head, I can't recall any. No. If any of you guys spotted any Easter eggs, let me know. Hayden 2012. Some reports say that Who fans were turning off in disgust tonight. Interesting. Why disgust? TM Martin. Something's missing, Dr. Blue. That's an understatement. What do you mean by that? Please elaborate if you're still here. Elaki TV. Hopefully I've pronounced that right this week. I'll only be here for a few minutes, but what do you think about the Doctor discussing her sister The Timeless Child, and the way Americans were portrayed as gun-loving idiots? Oh, I like this question. So to answer the first part, yes. Now I forgot about the Doctor mentioning, I forget the actual line that she said, but she mentioned having sisters or something like that. And then, oh, and then she mentioned she was a sister, I think. Hopefully she means in a nunnery or a place like that, as opposed to being a woman in the past. Just because, in my head at least, the first incarnation... Well, no, it's been proven. The William Hartnell Doctor, which is the first incarnation of that particular Time Lord, is male. So it always bugged me whenever Stephen Moffat made jokes about the Doctor being a young girl. I think he only did it in a couple of episodes, but it still really bugged me. But no, the sister line, having sisters, I should say, that does add further weight to my theory that the Timeless Child is a sibling. But then at the same time it doesn't, because well, no, not me. In the Ghost Monument, the remnants mentioned something about the Doctor having forgotten who the Timeless Child was, whereas in this episode it's shown that she remembers her siblings. So maybe the Timeless Child isn't a sibling. But I've no idea. Only time will tell. And then the second part of your question, what do you think of the way Americans were portrayed as gun-loving idiots? Yes, so the character of Robertson, I didn't like him, to say the least. I thought he was despicable. But that was the way he was written. He was deliberately written to be dislikable, so that's all fine. And sometimes it's good to have episodes that contain people who you don't want to have survived through to the end. As long as they don't do that every episode, because that would be very frustrating. But yeah, so the thing is, yes, he's American, but I like to think just because he's an idiot who loves using guns, I don't think this episode is making out as though all Americans are like that. I think they're just saying that Robertson is someone who is obsessed with guns and isn't a very nice person. Basically Donald Trump, essentially. So yeah, I don't think there's any agenda behind it, trying to say, oh, look at Americans and how stupid they are. I think it's literally just saying some people are like this. Some people like using weapons, and it's not always the way forward. Hayden 2012, I think we're missing a really good baddie, but think the writers are trying to make it family friendly, and in doing so could be diluting the plot. Yeah, good point. Elaki TV, the Weeping Angel's back on the shelf. Yep, well noticed. I moved it back once the stream ended last week, but keep watching it, because you never know, it might slowly get closer and closer. Random Anime Fan 1412, I thought it was unlikely they could catch all of the spiders apart from one in the panic room. Yeah, it was very convenient that Ryan's choice in music managed to bring all the spiders into that one panic room. Yeah, so that I wasn't particularly fond of. And also, because it links in nicely to what you were just saying, I thought the whole ending was a bit anticlimactic. You had all this focus on the big spider that was basically dying anyway, and then Robertson comes in and just shoots it. But I think it would have been good to at least have seen the other spiders in the panic room one more time. I mean, it would have been brutal to see them suffocate and die however the Doctor killed them. But just the fact we didn't see that, you sort of... I don't know, I just felt that was one of the things that was missing for me, really. The fact that all these spiders, you know, they were the villains of the episode, and we only saw the massive one die. Everything else happened off screen. And I don't like it when things happen off screen. I want to see it with my own eyes. TM Martin, Dr. Blue, how do you feel about Jack Robertson getting away scot-free? There seemed to be no real ending or climax to the episode. So, yeah, that links in perfectly to what I was literally just saying about rushed ending. Yeah, so I wasn't happy with the fact that Robertson got away scot-free either. But it's not the first time this has happened. You've had, well, what immediately comes to mind is Voyage of the Damned. I forget the character's name, but there was that businessman who only cared about himself and he survived. And I remember afterwards the Doctor and Mr. Cooper were discussing it and saying no one has the right to determine who lives and who dies. But yeah, Robertson I really didn't like, and I really wanted to see him die, not going to lie there. Um, but yeah, but actually adding to that, and that's another point I mentioned, well, I keep saying mentioned, no, another point on my list that I wanted to mention. I felt like the Doctor didn't deal with Robertson the way she should have done. And what I mean by that is, so she's a character that's against gun use, obviously, but she didn't really have a go at Robertson for shooting the giant spider at the end. And there was another moment earlier in the episode, which I can't really remember at the top of my head, but just her reactions to some of the things he was saying, I expected more from her. I expected more of her being on the moral high ground, basically, when what actually happened was she allowed him to say his piece and then would just carry on dealing with the spiders. Yeah, I need to watch the episode back to fully work out where I'm going with this point, but I just felt like she didn't criticise him as much as she should have done. Hayden 2012 wanted Robertson to get eaten by the spider. I'm glad you agree. City Shark Jr. didn't realise that Arachnids in the UK has already been released. Yep, so it was shown an hour and a half ago now, is when it finished. TM Martin thinks that Planet of the Spiders was way better than this episode. That's fair enough. It probably is, to be fair. Like I've heard very good things about the episode. But yeah, I really need to get round to watching it before I can agree or disagree. 10 Wheel Dude really enjoyed the episode. It's the first creepy episode since Oxygen, although it exploits the fact many of us are already afraid of spiders. Also picked up on lots of neat references in this one. That's really good you enjoyed it, I'm glad. And yeah, I think, well, Oxygen, I do love Oxygen. And funny enough, I watched it again 2 nights ago with some friends. Yeah, so Oxygen is another very good creepy episode. But I like to think we have had creepy episodes since. What immediately comes to mind is World Enough and Time. That was a very creepy episode. And it really affected me as well. I'm struggling to find the word here, but the scene with the patients, I think is what they're called. You know, the stage between humanity and Mondasian Cyberman, when people are covered in the cloths, and there's one of them just pressing the pain button. Unnerving, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, that scene really unnerved me. And the whole episode was quite darkly lit as well, which I quite liked. It was very gringy and spooky. Yeah, so I think that was, for me, that was the last creepy episode before Arachnids in the UK. But yeah, if you're still here, 10 Wheel Dude, please let me know what references you picked up on, because I'd love to hear it. BJL loves how the TARDIS can open her doors automatically. Yep, I think, but haven't all TARDISes been able to do that though? At the very least, the Doctor has only had to click their fingers for the doors to open. Bruzy is wondering if they're the only person who thinks the show is becoming too political. Yeah, I don't think it's becoming too political, to be honest. I mean, there's certainly political elements in there. For instance, with this episode, you've obviously got the mention of Donald Trump, and Robertson is literally a Donald Trump character. But I think sometimes you do need to reflect real life. And I suppose it makes it interesting when episodes like this are watched further down the line in future years, because you can look at it and go, oh yeah, that episode was shown when Donald Trump was president of the United States. So I don't know, it grounds it in reality, I think. But yeah, as long as it's not overly done too much, then I don't really have an issue with it. Dr. Collectible, why is the picture mirrored this week, Dr. Blue? I have no idea. Sorry if that's annoying any of you. To be honest, it's annoying me, mainly because I don't know why it's doing that, because I swear I've set this up exactly the same as all the other times. But on the plus side, even though it's mirrored, that is actually how my room looks, I think, anyway. And that is actually how I look if you saw me in real life. Up until this point, you've actually been seeing the mirrored version. Yeah, I really don't know why, but that's one positive of the new look for this week's episode. BJL, did you like Jade? Honestly, I can't properly remember who Jade is. I'm assuming she's the scientist woman, in which case I barely noticed her, to be honest. I mean, she was a good enough actress, but there were so many characters towards the end of the episode that I only really paid attention to the Doctor, Graham, Ryan, Yaz, and Robertson. Yaz's mum and Jade, who I'm assuming is the scientist, they just sort of blended in the background for me. But she was okay. There's been worse characters in the show. Dave H thinks the story and music was good in this episode. Music, I certainly agree. I preferred the music in Rosa, to be honest, but the score was still very creepy and unnerving. And what was the other thing? The story, yeah, I'm not sure. I think I need to see the episode again to properly decide what I feel, but in a nutshell, I can understand why some people allegedly got bored by the episode, because you could argue it was a bit slow in places, and yeah, I was kind of expecting more of an explanation for why the spiders became big, and I wasn't particularly interested in the fact that it was all toxic waste, but that's just me. Dash Maniac thought it was a really strong episode, but the ending was weak. Yeah, like I said earlier, I thought the ending was weak as well. 10-Wheel Dude, happy to see a bit more of the TARDIS. Chibnall seems to be less keen on using and basing everyone inside the TARDIS so far this season. I don't really know what you're saying there, 10-Wheel Dude, so sorry about that. And I am 20 minutes behind. Oh dear. Oh, never mind. BJL, she is a science woman. Oh, good, so I was right. Tim Martin loves the phraseology about classic Who is like a poison chalice, because fans will always compare new episodes to the classics, and many times the new episodes cannot compete, meaning Series 11. Yeah, especially when it comes to the budget, the classic series had next to no budget, and you look at Series 11 and every episode looks like a film, so it is quite unfair to compare, at the very least, the special effects. But you can compare the writing and the acting, at least. But yeah, no, it's always a struggle comparing things, I find. And I think that's partly why I only ever compare New Who stories to each other, because they're made in similar time frames and with similar budgets, and usually with similar writers as well. Plus, there's the fact that I'd only started watching Classic Who in the past 2 years, say. So it's a bit unfair of me to compare something I haven't seen much of to New Who, which I'm just obsessed with. Hayden 2012, in a series, there is always going to be weak episodes. Bradley Walsh gets me emotional, to be honest, because it's brilliant acting. Yeah, so in regards to your first point, it is true, every series has weak episodes. I wouldn't say just yet that this episode was weak. It certainly wasn't the best that the series has to offer so far, but I think it beats the Ghost Monument at least. Not by much though, maybe, but I don't know because I've seen the Ghost Monument 3 times, and this episode I've only seen once, so it's very unfair to compare them. But yeah, no, you're bound to get weak episodes. It's just you have to try to reduce the number of weak episodes you have, and hopefully Chris Chibnall has done that, and the rest of the series will be just as good, if not better, or hopefully better, than all the episodes we've had so far. And yeah, so nice point about Bradley Walsh there, which is another thing I wanted to bring up on my list. I loved Bradley Walsh in this episode. He was the standout character for me this week, I think. People have said before, his acting is all in his eyes, and I completely agree. You can see how his eyes get watery when he's feeling emotional, and the faces he pulls, it just says it all. Sometimes you don't need words to get across how you're feeling, and he manages it in just the face, which is incredible. But what I especially liked about this week's episode was his sort of subplot of seeing Grace again in visions. So if any of you guys have been watching these live streams since episode 1, I think it was in that video that I mentioned that Grace is meant to be a recurring character, not a guest star. So a recurring character obviously means they appear in several episodes. So I was curious to find out how Grace would be coming back, and I assumed that we would either have Grace coming back from the dead, which could still happen, but I really hope it doesn't, because I don't like it when deaths are undone in the show. I just think it ruins the notion of death. So that brought me to my second idea, which was this week's episode could have taken place before the woman who fell to Earth, and I thought it would have been really interesting to have Grace would obviously still be alive, and there would be it would be horrible for the characters, but it would be an interesting subplot to have Ryan and Graham know that Grace is going to die very soon, but they can't do anything to change that. So it's a bit like Father's Day. Obviously we didn't get that with the actual episode. This actually took place very soon after The Woman Who Fell to Earth, which was quite interesting. But I really like how they handled Grace, having her as a vision that only Graham can see. I thought that was really nice, really emotional. How he's doesn't he sniff a blanket at one point? And he's just looking around the house and remembering her. So that was really sweet and really emotional. And just because I'm still talking about Graham, I might as well mention this point. I absolutely loved, how he wants to continue travelling with the Doctor as a way to cope with the grief. I thought that was a really touching moment. And what's especially nice is a lot of the audience can relate to that, because everyone's lost someone at some point in their lives. They may not have passed away, it may be someone that's moved away, or you've fallen out of touch with a friend or whatnot. And I like to think the show helps, just going on adventures with these characters takes your mind off the sort of empty feeling you get when someone you care about is no longer with you. So it was nice to have Graham be that sort of viewpoint in the TARDIS, because I don't think we've ever had someone that's been grieving in the TARDIS before. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, his speech he gave was really nice, and again, he did all his acting in his eyes, even though he was speaking as well. But I really love that. Gonna have to take this off because it's getting hot. And I think, just while I'm remembering it, this stream will probably be shorter than the rest because I've had quite a busy weekend. I visited some friends from uni, so I did a lot of travelling, and I had to sleep on the floor as well, so I haven't got that much sleep. So at the very least this will be an hour long, and then after that we'll see how we go. Tracy Beacon Memories, the end was poor, what even happened to the spiders? Yeah, so people have mentioned this already, so I'm glad I'm not alone in thinking that the ending was a bit weak. And yeah, it wasn't really explained what happened to all the spiders. Dash Maniac, if this episode occurred 30 minutes since the ending of the first episode, and people said that the spider activity had been going on for days, where were the spiders in The Woman Who Fell to Earth? Very, very good point there. And that is actually something I noticed as well, but forgot to mention on my list. Yeah, so that's a plot hole, I think. You could argue that the Doctor and her friends got lucky in the premiere and just weren't in any areas that the spiders were about. They were all just inside buildings as opposed to out and about when the Doctor and everyone was running after Tim Shaw. But yeah, no. At the very least, I realised surely Grace's house would have already had the cobwebs in, because you have to remember, Ryan and Graham woke up in that house before supposedly seeing the Doctor off at the end of the episode, and yet this episode takes place half an hour after when we had the cliffhanger to episode 1. And when Graham goes back to the house, there's suddenly a bunch of cobwebs and a dead spider in the attic. Maybe it was just hiding in the attic and no one went in there, but no, I do think it's a plot hole, to be honest. Dave H, did you see the rumour that the next series will be 2020? I did, and I really hope that's not true, because I just hate Doctor Who having long hiatuses, and I think it's especially bad if it happens after every series. So we already had it between series 9 and 10, we've had it between series 10 and 11, if we have it between series 11 and 12, that makes 3 years in a row, and it means, I think I've got my maths slightly out here, but I think across 6 years we would only have 3 series. So from 2015 to 2020, yeah, that's 6 years, isn't it? And in that time, series 9, series 10, series 11, oh okay, and then maybe series 12 in 2020. But still, that's 2 gap years for the show, really. And back in Russell T Davies' era, he managed to do 13 episodes every year, along with Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures. I know circumstances change, but he did a really good job. He had next to no budget, because bearing in mind he was bringing the show back from the dead, and he had so many different spin-offs to juggle as well, and he managed it, and is still alive and well, hopefully. So surely Stephen Moffat could have managed it, and Chris Chibnall should be able to manage it as well, but we don't know at this stage until the BBC confirms anything. Very thirsty today. 10-Wheel Dude, the strongest element of the new season is definitely the characters. Another cracker this week. I still time for some good baddies. I think the plots are a slight mess, but I'm still having a good time. Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with what you're saying there. The characters are always the standout thing, even the dislikable ones like Robertson. On the topic of good baddies, yeah, it's true. We've still got another 6 episodes to have a villain that can beat Tim Shaw, which isn't saying much. don't get me wrong, I really like Tim Shaw, but he isn't the best villain we've had. Um, but yeah, I'll say this now, I'll probably regret this next week, but I have high hopes for the villain of next week's episode. I know nothing about it, apart from the fact that I think I was reading this in Doctor Who magazine yesterday. I think the idea for this villain wasn't actually Chris Chibnall's idea, even though he wrote next week's episode. This actually came from, I think, a friend of his who I don't really know why they were discussing the episode. But yeah, basically, this idea came because of this person, this creature, and apparently it's a very interesting concept. So I'm looking forward to that. And actually, while I'm on the topic, in general, I'm looking forward to the, oh God, how do I pronounce the name? Suranga Conundrum, whatever the episode title is. Just because I know next to nothing about the plot, the title gives away nothing, the trailers gave away nothing, we've had hardly any pictures and promotion for the episode. All I know at this stage is space is involved, a spaceship is involved, I think. And I think the Doctor, Graham, Yaz and Ryan get injured towards the start of the episode, and that's why they're in like a medical bay. But that is all I know about the episode. So I'm really excited to see it, and I really hope it doesn't let me down, because I am very excited for it. Tim Martin, Dr. Blue, what do you think about Raz? Oh my God, I've just merged their names together. Well, I suppose that's somewhat relevant to what you're saying there, because you're talking about couples. What do you think about Ryan and Yaz becoming a couple? There's so much of a push on that on the show, and I'd rather they leave it out. Yes. So I've said before, I would much rather have this series be everyone in the TARDIS just being good friends and no relationship. But in one of my previous videos, a YouTuber called Philip Hawkins did bring up the very good idea, well, the very good theory that seems to be coming true now, that gradually through their travels, Ryan and Yaz will become closer and eventually will become a couple. And it does look like that's what we're having now. And that I can tolerate, I think, to be honest. I think the only thing I wouldn't have wanted to see is them coming into the show already a couple, because we've already had that with Amy and Rory, Rose and Mickey. You could say even in the very first series with the first Doctor, you had Ian and Barbara. They were married and they came into the TARDIS, a married couple. So at least Chibnall is doing something different this time, making it a gradual thing. And personally, I don't think it's being pushed too much. I don't mind it. They're still good friends for now. Bruzy didn't like the episode. Eliki TV, are you glad that after 2 episodes someone died? I am indeed. As regular viewers will know, I'm someone that enjoys seeing death in Doctor Who because I'm a weirdo like that. Yeah, so I think we had 2 deaths in this episode. Correct me if I'm wrong. Personally, I would have liked a couple more. Maybe a minimum of 3 per episode. But that's just me being a violent sod. But yeah, no, so seeing the people wrapped in the cocoons, that was really creepy. And I would hate that to happen to me. So yeah, that's quite a dark way to go. But I enjoyed seeing that. And yeah, I am glad that we have had a return to deaths after 2 episodes without it. Hayden 2012, we're missing a really good villain. All of the enemies so far seem diluted in badness. Yeah, good point. The villains have been okay. They haven't been terrible, but they are quite forgettable. Luke NUFC, who's going to be the villain in the next episode? Who's going to be the villain in the next episode? It has to be a big one. So yeah, if you're still listening, I did mention a few minutes ago about the villain for next week and how I've got high hopes for them. I did actually mention in my 11 Hopes for Series 11 video that Chris Chibnall apparently has this really good idea for the scariest monster ever, according to Stephen Moffat. And that was one of my hopes for this series, that it will appear. But having said that, I literally said 5 minutes ago that the villain in next week's episode isn't Chris Chibnall's idea. So I guess we're not going to get this scariest monster ever in that episode. But there's still time. It could appear in the series finale if Tim Shaw doesn't come back. Or it could appear in any other episode that Chris Chibnall may be writing. Who knows? Who knows? Or he may be saving it for a later series. But I'd love to see it sooner rather than later, because I first found out about this idea, I think 6 years ago, because I think it was going to be in one of Chris Chibnall's stories for Series 7, when he wrote Dinosaurs on a Spaceship and The Power of Three, but it never got used because it was too expensive. E-low-key. There we go. Okay, I'll try and remember to say that. E-low-key. Nice. At least I got closer in pronouncing your name. TM Martin, do you notice a pattern in Series 11 where all the big bad villains and anti-heroes are just getting away? Yes, I have. And I did wonder, after last week's episode, if both Tim Shaw and Krasko would return. With the guy, I forget his name, but the guy that was in the Ghost Monument, you know, the one that arranged the race, I don't think he will return. Because technically he wasn't a villain. All he did was set up a race and then abandon the Doctor and everyone afterwards, which, okay, is not the nicest thing ever, but he didn't put them in that situation. The Doctor put them in the situation instead, from doing all the teleporting jazz. But yeah, so Tim Shaw, I'm fairly certain, will return. Krasko, maybe he'll return in one of the historicals. Maybe he'll return in the Demons of Punjab, I think it's called. Although I doubt it. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see. 10-Wheel Dude, the last few moments when the Doctor makes sure they want to come gets a bit dark. Just to call back to the unfortunate fate of other companions, or do you think one of them will die later in the series? Good question. Yeah, so even though it was dark, I like the fact that the Doctor was sensible and said, look, it's not always safe, it's not always easy, there is a risk. Yeah, because then she's making sure they're making the best decision. I really don't know at this stage if any of the characters will die. I mean, at this moment in time, probably at least one of them will die. Because then you could have the next series with a slightly smaller TARDIS crew. And it could be about them dealing with one of their friends dying. But then really that's a similar plot point to Grace dying. So maybe Chris Chibnall won't do that. Maybe that will be the catalyst for all of them to stop travelling. The fact that one of them has died and the other characters are just so devastated that they never want to speak to the Doctor again. That would be dark. Oh, I don't think I'd like to see that, actually. But it would be good TV. Yeah, I've completely forgotten what you were saying now. Do you think it's a callback to the unfortunate fate of other companions, or do you think one of them will die later? I think it's also a callback, but it could possibly be foreshadowing for one of them to die later on. Bruzy thinks the show was so deliberately trying to be political, it's annoying. And when that Stormy song came on, I cringed and the ending was terrible. Worst episode of Doctor Who ever. Okay, very strong opinion. Oh, and you did a follow-up message. I'm not trying to be rude in your stream, just saying my opinion. That's fair enough, yep. As long as you're civilised in what you say, then I don't mind if people hate episodes. And what you said there, Bruzy, even though I personally don't agree with it, is perfectly fine, and I'm not going to have a go at you for that. So I don't think you're being rude. But yeah, so the political aspect we've mentioned before. It was a bit political, this episode, but like I said, I do think it's good to reflect real world sometimes. What else did you say? The song, yep, I cringed as well. That was not my favourite part of the episode. Maybe it was just me not being a fan of that type of music, but it just felt off. No, I didn't like it. I didn't. But no, I definitely didn't think it was the worst episode ever. I think there's plenty of episodes that are worse than Arachnids in the UK, to be honest. 10-Year-Old Dude thinks New Who has always poked fun at Americans. Impossible Astronaut, for example. Hope they take it well. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, this episode is not the first to take the mickey out of Americans, and I doubt it will be the last. But hopefully no one takes offence. Controversial. Dash Maniac. Rosa's ending is one of my least favourite endings. Probably because I hate pop songs. That is fair enough. For me, it's the opposite. It's one of my favourite endings. Not necessarily because I love pop songs, but because I know I've said it loads in last week's live stream, so sorry for bringing it up again. But I just loved how everything came together in the ending. And I thought the music, the Rise Up song, was used perfectly. And I didn't realise until after I watched the episode, it's actually an unofficial anthem for Black Lives Matter. So that makes it even more relevant. And I just especially loved how that music replaced the Doctor Who theme over the credits. I think that's the thing that ultimately made me cry after the episode. Yeah, so I personally loved it. And it's inspired me to try playing around with the endings of other episodes now. Hayden 2012, Robertson was based on Donald Trump. Yep, that is obvious. Dave H, I liked how we saw the vulnerability of the Doctor at the start, saying goodbye. Yeah, me too. So that scene was actually released last week. God knows why. Because yeah, I think this is the first episode of the series that's had a clip. Oh no, it's not, because the premiere had a clip released before the actual episode, but we didn't have any preview clip for the Ghost Monument or Rosa. Not that I have a problem with it, but it was just weird that we had it for this episode. But yeah, I really liked that scene. I really liked how you could see the loneliness there and how she needs these three characters, and how, well, Yaz especially still wants to see the Doctor. And yeah, I just love how excited the Doctor got about having tea at Yaz's. That was quite sweet. Dave H, have you noticed nearly every time the Doctor uses the sonic screwdriver, the camera changes to face her as she points it? I did not notice that, to be honest. Doctor Collectible, what do you think of the new Time Vortex CGI? It is so trippy, but I love it. Thank you for bringing it up, because it saves me having to read it off my list. Yeah, so we finally got to see the new Time Vortex in this episode. And it's very colourful, very trippy. Looked like it had different pathways as well. It didn't look like it was just one tunnel. It looked like there was several different tunnels, which I thought was a really cool thing to have. Random Anime Fan 1412. It was pointed out to me that the spiders in the panic room would turn to cannibalism. Yeah, good point. But I think the Doctor killed them all once they were in that room. But like I said earlier, it's not really made clear. They talk about it very quickly, and then you have all that scene with the big giant spider that can't even climb up the wall. Then Robertson shoots it, and then the story ends, basically. So we never really see what happens to the smaller spiders. Eloki TV. Hopefully I pronounced that right this time. I like that the Time Vortex is the same as the one in Twice Upon a Time. Is it? I thought it was slightly different. I'll have to double check that. Nathan Marlowe liked the Time Vortex as well. Examaku, it would be good for a Weeping Angel episode because Jodie looks... What would be good for a Weeping Angel episode? I have no idea. Dash Maniac, Doctor Who should continue the Weeping Angel cliffhanger in Class. Completely agree. That's one of the reasons, one of the big reasons that I'm gutted that Class never continued, because what was being set up looked so exciting. How there was humans working with the Weeping Angels, in case some of you guys hadn't watched Class. Yeah, so it's really gutting that it will never get a second series. Examiku, where are the creepy episodes in season 11? I'm assuming you're on about the poll. If you are, it turns out I never set one. So sorry, there's only the 4 polls. I've no idea which corner of the screen they're in. But yeah, there isn't a question for that, I'm afraid. But please message away if you did find the episode creepy. Tia Martin, what's your theory on Doctor Who at some point in her travels seemingly enjoying the company of the iconic American aviator Amelia Earhart when she says she's a right laugh? I really liked that, actually. Yeah, I like to imagine all the adventures they had together. I don't have a theory on it, to be honest. I just think at some point in one of the Doctor's previous lives, she travelled with her and they encountered... Did the Doctor say they encountered strong spider webs? I think she did. But yeah, there's a Big Finish story in that. Google account. They might have well called the hotel manager Tronald Trump, as they were so unsubtle. Why can't you shoot them like civilized people? Yeah, I suppose you have a point there. I hated that line. Let me just quickly say that whole line about why can't you shoot them like civilized people. Ow. Yeah, and I think that was one of the moments where I felt like the Doctor didn't respond to Robertson as she should have done. I think she just gave him a look and that was it. When that is such a controversial line that the Doctor should have said something, really. Tim Martin loves politics but doesn't necessarily want to see social justice messages all the time in sci-fi shows. This week there was a message about guns. At some point you feel like you're being manipulated. True. Very true, I suppose. Yeah, it is a tricky one because I think, well, especially with you and I, Tia Martin, I know we've spoken before about gun laws. Yeah, everyone has different opinions on them, really. But I like to think Doctor Who is justified, at least, because it's a family show and you shouldn't really be encouraging violence, especially shooting things. Because personally, I just think it's wrong to shoot things full stop. Okay, no, not full stop. Oh, it's difficult. I haven't even thought about my proper views on the matter. I think it's a wishy-washy subject when it comes to the army, but I don't think civilians should have guns, basically. That's my view. I personally believe America is wrong to have guns. So when Doctor Who mentions guns and how the Doctor's against it, I'm usually on her side because I do think it's not right to have the capability to shoot people. Dave H, I hope we get to see Ryan's dad soon. That's a good point. Yeah, we might even see him at the end of the series. Dash Maniac, why was the Doctor angry when Robertson shot the big spider? The spider was suffering. Would the Doctor rather have seen the spider have a slow and painful death rather than a quick death? Very good point. Yeah, again, it's going back to the gun use. You make a very good point, though. It is putting it out of its misery. I suppose it's the fact that it's just a very violent thing. It felt pain before dying. Sure, it died very quickly, but I think it was rolling around on the floor in agony before it properly died. And I bet the Doctor had another idea to pull it out of its misery gently that we just never got to see. Tim Martin, Dr. Blue, I take it that Arachnids in the UK is not an episode that you'll want to see over and over again. Also, what are your top 3 most rewatched Doctor Who episodes of all time? I like these questions. Thank you very much. Yeah, so when it comes to Arachnids in the UK, I think I'll certainly watch it again this evening after doing this stream, as I've been doing with all the Series 11 episodes. But I do think after this time, I will leave the episode alone for at least a year. Because, yeah, some episodes just don't excite me that much and don't have that much rewatch value. Rosa, I've seen 3 times. The Woman Who Fell to Earth, I've seen 3 times already. And The Ghost Monument, I've seen twice. A lot of it is down to circumstance. Like, so Rosa and The Woman Who Fell to Earth, the reason I watched them a 3rd time was because I would then watch it with people who haven't seen the episode before. So if a friend ever asks me, oh, do you want to watch this episode again? Quite often I say yes to that because it's a different experience seeing it with new people. I like to see it through other people's eyes. But that only applies when the episode has enough for me to still enjoy, if that makes sense. Basically, what I'm getting at is Arachnids in the UK is a good episode, but like you said, it's not really one that I want to rewatch over and over again. As for my top 3 most rewatched Doctor Who episodes, oh, you put me on the spot there. God. My God, I really don't know. Because quite a few of them I watch over and over again. What immediately comes to mind, and actually I'm looking at the poster of it now, A Christmas Carol, I've watched every Christmas, not Christmas Day, but near Christmas, every year since it was first on. So I've seen that episode at least, what year are we in? 2018? 8 times at least. And no doubt there was a couple of years where I probably watched it just because I was feeling like it. So that's one. God, that's a very difficult question to answer. What else? A lot of Series 1 stories. I've seen loads. Just because when I was very young and there wasn't many Doctor Who series on at that time, I would go back and rewatch all those episodes. So yeah, a lot of Series 1, 2 and 3 stories I've seen a lot. Vincent and the Doctor I've seen several times. Yeah, I'm sure there's more, but they're not coming to mind at the moment. What I do try to do nowadays is when there's an episode that I really like, you might think I'm stupid for doing this, but I try to preserve it and not watch it as much as other episodes. So then that way, when I do eventually rewatch it, it's like watching it for the first time again. So some episodes I've already done that to include Day of the Doctor. Even though that's one of the best episodes ever, I've only seen that about 4 times, I think, maybe even less. I tried to watch it once a year, but I think I missed a year. I think I missed last year, actually. Heaven Sent, I've only seen twice, I think, and I love that episode to pieces. And actually, I need to get round to watching it again. Series 10, I started rewatching that a few months ago, but I just stopped. Not because I wasn't enjoying it, but just because I got distracted by Series 11. Yeah, so a lot of those episodes I've only seen twice in the first week that they were shown. So that was the beginning of 2017 was the last time I watched them. But anyway, moving on. Google account feels like the Timeless Child is the Doctor's sister. Oh, so that's good that you agree with me that it could be a sibling. Dave H, the spiders were hiding in houses. Yep. Doctor Collectible, at the end of episode 1, we had the funeral. That wouldn't have taken place till a few weeks after her death, so the spiders could have started in that few weeks. Very good point, yeah, but it still doesn't solve the fact that there was cobwebs in Grace's house, despite the fact that Ryan and Graham woke up in that place. I'm explaining that really poorly. But basically, right, so they woke up in that house at the end of episode 1, and presumably Graham didn't notice anything, because when he goes back into the house at the start of episode 4, he's suddenly noticing all these cobwebs. That's what I'm getting at. Jack Perry, wonder if there were any spiders in the first episode. Would be really good foreshadowing. Yep, it would have done. We'll have to go back and rewatch the episode and see if there are any scuttling spiders about. Tia Martin, do you think arachnids in America... Don't you mean in the UK? Arachnids in the UK? Was timed to coincide with Halloween? Yeah, most likely. I do feel like this episode was deliberately written to scare people. So it can't have been a coincidence that it was shown so close to Halloween. It's Sammed YT. Who died in the episode? I didn't get to finish it. So the only deaths were Robertson's staff. There was the woman from the start of the episode who randomly explored that cavey place and then got cocooned. And then the same thing happened to his personal assistant, I think. And they were the only people who died. Oh, no, three. 3 people died. There was also the neighbour of Yaz's family. Completely forgot about her. 10 Will Dude, have you heard new whisperings this week that Torchwood or Captain Jack could be on the way back? I have, and I would love it if Captain Jack came back. Torchwood I'm not as fussed about because it's still running as an audio drama. So it's technically on season 6 and it isn't cancelled. But no, I'd love Captain Jack to come back in Doctor Who. City Shark Jr. Maybe we need the long hiatuses to have the awesome production value. Because like you've said, every episode looks and feels like a movie. Good point, but that also comes with the risk of losing viewers. If you have so long that the show's not on, people will move on and find other shows. And I think that's probably what happened with Series 10. Even though that was marketed as being a fresh start, just like Series 11, the fact that it was more of the same and we had this big gap between the series, I think a lot of people just weren't fussed when it came back again. And Series 11 had the advantage of a female doctor and everything changing. So maybe the gap did help in Series 11, but I personally don't think so. Motorhawk 2, in your poll, you class the spiders as an enemy. The spiders were not an enemy but victims. The real enemy were humans and their greed. Very good point. But the spiders still killed people and they were still the main threat of the story. So I thought it was appropriate to put them down. How far behind am I? Oh, okay, I'm gradually catching up. 10 Will Dude, who thinks Kill the Moon is the best spider-themed episode? Really? Well, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Like, I must admit, I quite like Kill the Moon. I can happily admit it's not the best episode. But I enjoy it, and I did enjoy seeing the spiders in it. And I thought Murray Gold did a very creepy score for the spiders at that point. But yeah, sorry, no, the reason I'm turning to my laptop is I very quickly wanted to check the poll again to see how everyone's voting. If you've just joined or recently joined and you didn't know, in, I think, that corner, I'm not sure. Oh, hey, there we go. I was waiting for the delayed reaction version of me. And there's questions such as, how do you rate this week's episode? which is the best Series 11 episode so far, etc, etc. So please do vote in them. And at the end of the video, I will do a final summary of how everyone's voted. So that does not look like it's changed all too much. Bear with me. Okay, how would you rate Arachnids in the UK? Just under half of you guys liked the episode. 8% didn't like it. No one hated it. 36% of people thought it was okay. And 8% loved it. So it seems clear to me that this episode isn't loved as much as Rosa from last week. And speaking of Rosa, that's still everyone, well, most people's favourite episode, with 60% of people voting for it. Which Series 11 enemy is your favourite? That's an interesting result we've got here. The new winner seems to be the giant spiders. So they've got just over a third of the votes. Then we've got Cresco with 30%. Then we've got Tim Shaw with 26%. And then, which spider featuring story is your favourite? The Runaway Bride is the winner. I'm surprised at that, to be honest. I thought most people would be saying this week's episode. And yeah, 14% of people said Kill the Moon. And another 14% said Arachnids in the UK. And then 9% of people did Planet of the Spiders. Well, that's nice. All the episodes have got votes, at least. Right, let's carry on with this. BT Sofa Reviews was hoping the episode would follow on from Planet of the Spiders. Ending was rushed. Spiders locked in toxic waste wasn't sorted. That guy should have blown it up, or the doctor should have taken them somewhere. Yeah, good point. It would have been nice if it followed on from Planet of the Spiders, even though half the audience wouldn't have had a clue what was going on. But it would have been nice for the hardcore fans. Yeah, the ending was rushed. We've mentioned that before. We mentioned how the spiders weren't dealt with properly. Yeah. Oh, good point. Good point from Dash Maniac here. This episode they were stuck in a hotel, which is just like the God Complex. Next episode they're stuck in a hospital, which is just like New Earth. Yeah, you're bound to get similarities in episodes, really. But I think the fact that this episode had giant spiders does make it different from the other one. TM Martin, did you notice that so far all the villains or anti-heroes are male? Wouldn't you quite like to see this doctor go up against a female villain? Completely agree. Yes. I will be honest, I hadn't actually picked up on the fact that all the villains have been male so far. That being said though, we are only 4 episodes into Series 11, and so there is still plenty of time to have a female villain. But yeah, I do hope we get more diversity with the villains. Because yeah, they all seem to be either alien males or white males. Hopefully that's not making any statement. But yeah, we need variety. And we need some really good monsters as well. Because so far all we've had are the Stenza, nearly forgot their name then. Shows how much they stand out. And we've had the Remnants. And the Remnants were literally just rags, which was so weird. They were okay, but I'm not going to remember them in a hurry. Bluetail Gang. Would you rather have Tim Shaw back or not at all? It depends on the story, to be honest, and what they do with him. I wouldn't mind seeing him come back for the finale, as long as they add more to his character, and as long as he's still really threatening and does something a bit different. Maybe he'll have a different villain, a different weapon or something. But I wouldn't want him to come back if it's at the expense of a really good monster idea that Chris Chibnall wants to use at some point. I'd much rather see a really creative villain just like the Weeping Angels or the Silence or the Gas Mask Child, even though that wasn't an alien. But you get what I mean, like a really cool villain that stands out. Jack Perry, I was hoping that the Arachnids would be the main villain. That would have been funny, but I personally doubted it. TM Martin, Jodie Whittaker has been criticised today on Twitter for making the 13th Doctor a bit too cartoonish. Do you think Jodie Whittaker is being judged too harshly? Does she need to tone it down? I don't know how to answer that, to be honest. I must admit, I do think she is a bit too childish at times. But that is just her Doctor. And maybe I'm just saying that because the show isn't really aimed at me anymore. It is a family show. It is meant to appeal to kids more than adults. Even though it appeals to everyone, it is mainly kids. So maybe that's why I think she's too childish, because I'm outside of that target audience now. But she's still a very good Doctor. But I wouldn't say she's cartoonish. I really don't know. Jack Perry, am I like 25 minutes behind the comments because you're reading comments out from 25 minutes ago? What time is it for you? Yeah, well, this is a recurring thing with all these live streams, Jack. I like to say my own piece and also dwell a lot on your messages. So that makes me fall really far behind on the live chat. Hopefully you guys don't mind it. But yeah, so if you are still interested to know, so you sent that at 8 minutes to 10, and it is now 17 minutes past 10. So that is a good, what is it, 25 minutes behind I am, I think. But yeah, I really don't know how live chat works. I think if you really wanted to, you could... I'm not sure if you're watching this live or a couple of minutes behind, but there's a buffer bar. Just drag that to where you want to go. Either way, I'm still not going to catch up to the messages anytime soon. Eloki TV, will you do a new theory soon? Hopefully, but I won't make any promises. For the foreseeable future, I've got these live streams, which are becoming like my weekly videos, unless I want to do like small edits throughout the week. And then I've got some exciting plans for December as well, and hopefully I'll be able to start talking about them next month, just to give you a tease there. But yeah, I don't think I'll be doing any theories throughout the rest of 2018 at least, so sorry if you're looking forward to them. Philip Hawkins, the time vortex was great, so beautiful, wonderful effects, and I loved the hub bit where it splits off into lots of different routes. First time it felt like a place that had to be navigated. Perfect summary, Philip, if you're still here. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier I really liked the vortex and I liked the different pathways, but you've said it better than I ever could. It does seem like a place that has to be navigated now, whereas with all the Doctors that I've seen, at least in the new Who series, it just seems to be a single tunnel, and all you have to do is go forwards or backwards or left or right, and that's it. Whereas this, it looks really complicated, so you can sort of see why the Doctor doesn't always get to where she needs to be. Eloki TV, apparently Earhart was a Nazi, so is the Doctor a Nazi? Even though 11 said saving Hitler was an accident. I did not know that Amelia Earhart was a Nazi. I hope that's not the case, but I doubt it makes the Doctor a Nazi, to be honest. BT Sofa Reviews. The hotel manager could have been doing what he was doing because he had a Metabelius 3 spider on his back, controlling him and his mind, like in Planet of the Spiders. That would be really interesting. Yeah, so as I said earlier, I still haven't seen Planet of the Spiders, but at the very least, I do know that their whole thing is how they control people by getting on their backs. Can they turn invisible when they're on people's backs? If so, then we could say that there was a spider on his back. Blue Tail Gang, who else likes how cartoony the 13th Doctor is? I think it makes her feel very different to the 12th. Yeah, so I know I said I do feel like the Doctor is too childish, but at the same time I do like the lighter aspect to her character and how it is such a stark contrast to the 12th Doctor. So I kind of agree with you there. Joey Vihera, sorry about my very poor pronunciation of your surname. In this episode, shooting the spiders would have been the civil thing to do, as compared to slowly suffocating / starving them in the safe room. Yeah, so it does call into question why the Doctor was so against Robertson shooting the big spider, really. I really don't know how to answer it. Philip Hawkins is explaining why I take so long to respond to comments. Thank you very much for doing it for me. Tim Martin, Dr. Blue, did you see Strictly Come Dancing this week? Journalist Stacey Dooley did a Doctor Who themed dance to the original Doctor Who theme, dressed like the 13th Doctor, and her partner dressed as a Cyberman. So yes, that was very fun. I've seen the dance. I don't actually watch Strictly myself, so I just tracked down the clip and watched that, and I really enjoyed it. What I especially liked was, I know you said they used the original Doctor Who theme, but they also used bits of the new theme tune as well, Segan's composition of it. So that was quite nice, because usually when the BBC uses the Doctor Who theme in shows that aren't Doctor Who, they use one of the early Murray Gold ones, and I don't know about anyone else, but when I hear that in, I think it's usually interviews they use it in, when they interview people that used to be in Doctor Who or are still in it, I cringe a lot because I just know it's the wrong theme tune for who they're interviewing and the context of when it's being used. So it's nice that for once they actually used an up-to-date version of the theme. But yeah, I was really happy they had a Doctor Who dance. Jack Perry, their favourite episode is Heaven Sent. It is a very good episode, so yeah, good choice. Blue Tail Gang, who watches Christmas episodes in the middle of summer? I know. When I was younger, I would watch Doctor Who episodes whenever I wanted, and it wasn't until a few years ago that I started restricting the Christmas episodes to Christmas time. I'm weird like that. Jack Parry, just watched Heaven Sent again today. Masterpiece. Yeah, really good episode. Tim Martin is responding to my most rewatched Doctor Who episodes. Thank you for saying it's a good list. I'm glad you agree. Day of the Doctor, yeah. Great rewatch episode. Yep. Cool. Penguin, bit late to the stream, so apologies if this has been asked, but was the resolution kind of dumb? Ryan played music in one room, and what? All the spiders in the UK scuttled into it. So yeah, doesn't matter that you're late. But yeah, this has been mentioned before, but I don't mind quickly explaining what was said. So yeah, I personally cringed a lot at the whole Ryan plays music to get the spiders into one room scene. I felt very uncomfortable watching it. And yeah, it's all too convenient as well. That's the big issue. Like you were saying, it brings all the spiders. Not in the UK, I think it's just all the spiders in Sheffield somehow heard that. Or maybe it was just all the ones in the hotel. I really don't know. The plot wasn't that hard to follow, but I must admit there are bits of it that I'm not really understanding. Eloki TV, me and my dad are watching this together, and he'd like to say that he's pleased to see an episode in this series that's not influenced by Arnold Schwarzenegger's 80s movies, Predator or Running Man or Terminator. Well, hello to you both. That's nice you're watching it with your dad, so hello Eloki's dad, if you're still here. Yeah, so I know people said the first episode was like Predator, but I didn't actually. Yeah, I didn't think about episode 2 was like Running Man and episode 3 was like the Terminator. So that's a very good point that you guys have picked up on. Yeah, so it is nice that this episode was more original. It's just a shame that, for me at least, it wasn't that exciting. I was a lot more invested in last week's episode, even if it was quite similar to the Terminator. City Shark Jr. Regarding the loss of viewers, wouldn't the true fans always stay? I would wait years if I could have this production value for every season. That's what's happening with Game of Thrones. They're taking a lot of years, but just look at the outcome. Very good point. But I think, particularly in the case of Game of Thrones, what helps them is how it's a show that, isn't it a 15? So you have to, I know people don't always keep to the age ratings, but its target audience is people over the age of 15 or maybe 12. I don't watch it myself, so I don't know the exact rating. And the older you get, the more patient you are. And I think what helps with that is, God knows why, and I find this really freaky, and I'm sure many of you guys might have experienced it as well, but the older you get, the shorter each year feels. So this gap between Series 10 and Series 11 did not feel, for me, as long as the gap between Series 4, the specials, and Series 5. That felt like an eternity, and a big reason for that was I was about 11 at the time, and yeah, when you're young, just time feels a lot longer, I think, and that's why I don't think Doctor Who should have big breaks, because then the really young kids and even the teenagers really, I can't speak for everyone obviously, but this is how I would feel at least. I would be frustrated by such a big gap between series, and it would in a way put me off the show. I agree the true fans will stay, but a lot of casual viewers would go, I think. Whereas with a show like Game of Thrones, because lots of adults watch it, they would just happily watch other programmes in the meantime, and the 2-year gap wouldn't feel as long for them. That's my theory, at least. How far behind am I? Oh, only 15 minutes, so that's okay. Philip Hawkins, do you think we might see Chris Noth, the hotel owner, again? Could be interesting to have a story set during his presidential run, or even one where he is president. Very nice idea there, Philip. I like it. I personally don't think we'll ever see him again. There's so many characters that could come back. We can't have them all returning, because that would just be ridiculous. But you do raise an interesting point about him running for presidency, and supposedly we won't ever see that. So there is a potential story there. But then you really do run the risk of making an episode that's way too political. And I think there would be too much backlash if Chris Chibnall did that, to be honest. So yeah, I think that's the last we've seen of him. We just have to assume, or hope, in my case at least, that he runs for presidency and loses because he's a horrible person. There we go. SL Productions thinks this episode was the second best in the series. And it's the first episode they haven't watched live since Flatline 4 years ago. Fair enough. You don't have to watch every episode live, and to be honest, it's quite good that you've gone so long managing to watch every episode live, because I think even I've had to miss a couple live. I can't remember which ones exactly, Series 9, at the very least, a lot of them I had to watch late in the evening because I just started university then and I had to socialise and work, unfortunately. Um, Maybe Series 10 as well. A few of them I had to miss live. But anyway, yeah, I do try to watch Doctor Who live when I can. Bluetail Gang, what is your favourite lever on the TARDIS? Well, we haven't really seen that much of the Doctor using the console yet, but from what we have seen, I really like the custard cream dispenser. That's a good way to get a snack if you're hungry. And I also like the typical flight lever that you pull down. I like how it's a recurring thing in most TARDIS consoles. In fact, it's probably in every single one. And actually, just while you've jogged my memory on it, I really liked the ending, how the Doctor asks if everyone wants to pull the lever down with her. I thought that was really sweet and a nice way to end the episode. Tia Martin, past Doctors have tempted young females away for TARDIS adventures, but Ryan/Yaz/Graham demand to be taken aboard. 13's reluctant. Is 13 being written as a more nurturing female paradigm? God, very good question. Blimey, I feel like my answer won't do that justice. Maybe. Although, no, I don't think so. I just think Chris Chibnall in that moment wanted the Doctor to remind them that it is a dangerous lifestyle. And so that's why she wasn't as quick to let them be companions. Philip Hawkins, you may have tackled this already, but how did you feel about the resolution to the big spider? In one sense, it was very anticlimactic, but on the other hand, it was kind of refreshing. Yeah, so that big spider, I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. Sorry to give you a really poor answer to your question, but I haven't really had much time to think about it and dwell on it, to be honest. How did you feel? It was very anticlimactic, but on the other hand, it was kind of refreshing. Yeah, so at the very least, I was fascinated by the fact that this spider was dying, basically. Because it took me a while to twig why it was trying to scramble up the wall. And yeah, I didn't realise until the Doctor explained it all to everyone. So I liked the fact that we saw a vulnerable side to the spiders by having this big one having mutated so much that it's struggling to breathe. I thought that was very refreshing. And yeah, I thought it was an interesting dilemma for the Doctor to work out how to deal with it. But then I thought it was disappointing that it was resolved just by having the villainous character, Robertson, strolling in and shooting it, because I swear that's been done in lots of episodes before. There's always been one character that shoots something that they don't understand. So I suppose I would say it's unoriginal. But no, I like the fact that we saw a vulnerable spider. And I think one of the characters said that the spider was actually more scared of the humans than they were of it, which is a nice parallel with the real world, how most of the time the spiders are more scared of us humans than we are of them. Tia Martin, care to comment about the appearance of psychic paper? Sure, I don't really know what you want me to say about it. I'm happy it's appearing in the series, because I do think it's a really handy way for the Doctor to show her authority without having to explain herself all the time. That's all I can say, really, unless there's anything specifically you wanted to know. SL Productions, Game of Thrones is an 18. Still watch it, that's fair enough. Yeah, I've watched a lot of shows that I was too young to watch, admittedly. But yeah, so you've proved my point there, SL Productions. So the fact it's an 18, it's being marketed at adults. I know teenagers and younger people watch it as well. But yeah, its target audience is adults. And the perception of time for adults is a lot quicker than for kids. So adults are generally more patient, and that's why the gaps don't really harm the ratings of Game of Thrones. Tia Martin doesn't like the long gaps between series either. Game of Thrones is ending after 2019, so they can get away with it as it's the grand finale. Any hints about this year's Christmas special? I have no idea what this year's Christmas special is about, and I think that's really exciting. I think it's good that we're having this focus on just Series 11. We don't even know what's being shown for Children in Need yet, which is quite cool. Hopefully we won't find out until the actual day. But yeah, with this Christmas special, we know they filmed it, but as far as I'm aware, no filming pictures or videos have been leaked. So maybe they've all filmed it entirely indoors. We'll just have to wait and see. But like I swear I've said this many a time now, I really like it when... I've completely lost my point now. Just completely vanished from my head. That's weird. I like it when we know nothing, basically, about the upcoming episodes. And that's partly why I'm really excited about this series. Just because even in Doctor Who magazine, which I've got in front of me there, the episode previews, they literally give nothing away. It's very clever how they do it. I don't really know how to describe it. Generally, it's 2-page spreads for each episode. But they just fill up the space with pictures, and then all the text is basically just generic interviews with the people who have helped make that episode, just talking about what it's like to film in South Africa, in the case of the Ghost Monument, talking a bit about Rosa Parks, in the case of Rosa. So yeah, it's very clever how they they don't give anything away, but they give you just enough to whet your appetite. God knows why I lost my point earlier. Sorry about that. City Shark Jr., you're saying we can't have all those characters return. Imagine now the season finale, it's just all the characters come back. Yeah, funny enough, I was thinking that as soon as I said aloud that these characters can't come back. But that would just be a weird series finale, wouldn't it? Having Tim Shaw team up with Robertson, teaming up with the Indian guy from the Ghost Monument, and also teaming up with Krasko. That would be such a weird combination, and I don't think it would work, to be honest. Elaki TV, with the deal with Jack being president, I think he could come back like Harriet Jones did after World War III. She actually came back twice and died. Sad face. Yeah, so there's a good chance Chris Chibnall could return to this character somewhere down the line. I don't think he'll appear anytime soon, but yeah, like Philip was saying earlier, there could be a story in that, but it may be too political, really. Right, so I'll keep going for now, guys, but I think at the 2-hour mark, or maybe a bit before, I will wrap up. SL Productions liked Bradley Walsh's wife's cameo in this story. Yep, so assuming you weren't here earlier when I mentioned this, that was one of the things I loved about the episode. I loved how it seems Grace is a recurring character in that she's a vision that Graham will keep seeing. Yeah, that I really liked. And I think that's a good way to have her return without bringing her back from the dead. So I'm all for that. And hopefully we see her again. I think it'll be quite nice to see more of how Graham is coping with his grief. It'll be nice if Ryan had a vision about her as well. I've just thought of that now. Yeah, I think that's quite cool. Yeah, that's all I can say. Joey Vahara, I really don't know how to pronounce your surname, so apologies again. What do you think of the backstory for the spiders? To me, the idea of toxic waste equals evil giant mutant spiders felt very cliche. Yeah, good point. I think I mentioned this earlier. I was just a bit disappointed, to be honest. the explanation, but I think in a way I wanted them to be alien spiders, like in Planet of the Spiders, or at the very least be able to communicate with humans. But these spiders had literally mutated, which is still interesting, but I don't know, something wasn't there for me. Oh, I'm running out of drink. I may lose my voice. Tim Martin, Dr. Blue, you say Doctor Who is geared more towards kids, but I find it's adults rather than kids who have arachnophobia. Chibnall is showing a mastery in scaring adults. Recall the crane scene / episode 1. True, yeah. But don't a lot of kids have arachnophobia as well? I certainly did. But yeah, no, he has done a good job in creeping out adults as well. Like, this is something I wanted to mention. A few of my friends messaged me after this episode to say how this episode had actually scared them. And one friend said they can't get in the bath again now after the bath scene. And another said they'll never look at spiders in the same way again. So, yeah, it is good that Doctor Who is managing to scare even adults, because that's quite a hard thing to do, scaring adults. I'm just gutted it didn't scare me. The most it did for me was creep me out. Bluetail Gang, which Doctor / Doctors would you want for the Christmas specials? I would want the 11th Doctor. Nice question, but I'm afraid my answer is quite boring. To be honest, I think, at least for the foreseeable future, I don't want any past Doctors to come back for a Christmas special. It's a completely different matter if it's the 60th anniversary or basically an anniversary special. But I think we've literally just had a multi-Doctor story with last year's Christmas special, and that was divisive for many reasons. Not because it was a multi-Doctor story, but I don't know. I think, well, the immediate thing I want to say is it's too soon to do another one. But if we're talking years down the line, I would love David Tennant to come back again. A, because I love him to bits, and B, I think he would play against Jodie Whittaker really well. But to be honest, I'd be open to any Doctor coming back, but maybe not the first Doctor. Not because I have a problem with David Bradley, nearly called him Bradley Walsh then, but just because I think his character has been tarnished by last year's Christmas special, and also, I won't lie, because he's not William Hartnell, I struggle to see him as the actual first Doctor. And that's one of the issues I had with Twice Upon a Time. The whole time I knew it was someone acting as the first Doctor, and I struggled to see him as the character. SL Productions thinks we should have a Martin Luther King episode. I would love that. And if it's anything like Rosa, I think that would just be the perfect historical episode. Eloki TV. I need to go now, but I'll reach from here. I don't know what you mean by that. Thanks for answering my questions, and my dad was very happy when you said hi to him, so thanks. My mum came for a bit after that too, so well done for satisfying a family. Bye. Well, thank you very much for joining Eloki TV, and it was nice your whole family joined in. That's weird. I didn't think people would watch this in a family, so it's nice to know that you've done it at least. I hope they all enjoyed it. Philip Hawkins. Oh, okay, this is interesting. I decided to skip showing this episode to my 3-year-old because at the moment she isn't scared of spiders, and I didn't want to change that. That is completely fair enough, Philip, and actually that's really sensible that you've done that. Hopefully it's an episode you can eventually show her, because I would hate to think she's missing out on episodes. But no, that's top-notch parenting there, thinking about you don't want to get her scared of everyday things. Out of interest, has she seen any of the typical Doctor Who scary episodes, like The Empty Child, Midnight, Silence in the Library. Do you keep her away from those episodes as well? Let me know if you're still here. How long have I got? 15 minutes. Hopefully my voice will last that long. And hopefully I'll manage to get to the end of the comments. Actually, I am doing well keeping up with the chat now. So that's good. TM Martin, I guess this episode explains how fans might only see Grace only as a vision. But could we see her in tangible form in a future episode? Interesting. So, as I've mentioned many a time now, if they were to have Grace come back as a physical character as opposed to this spirity vision thing, the only way I would accept it really is if they do that episode idea of going back. Sorry, something was in my mouth then, or throat. God knows what that was. Hopefully not a spider. That would be terrifying. But anyway, what was I saying? Completely lost my point. Seeing Grace come back. Oh yeah, I would only be happy if they did an episode prior to her death. So set prior to her death. And then you can have that interesting subplot of Ryan and Graham not being able to prevent her from dying. If they just straight up brought her back from the death, I think I would be, furious in a way. Partly because Stephen Moffat has already done that loads of times and already ruined death in Doctor Who, in my opinion. But also, at this moment in time, Chris Chibnall is writing death and grief so well and realistically that to have Grace come back at the end of the series just completely undoes all of that, or undoes. And all that character development that Ryan and Graham are currently going through, coming to terms with the fact that she's no longer there, that's just completely gone. And they've got their gran back. Sure, they're happy, but that's not true to real life. And I think that's why I do want Doctor Who to keep dead characters dead. Because in real life, yes, it's good to have hope, but the simple fact of life is, once someone dies, that's it. They're not coming back, unfortunately. And so it's nice to have characters in this fictional show be able to come to terms with that, because then it encourages us to accept it. Does that make any sense? Hopefully I'm coming across well enough in this point. But yeah, so like Clara in particular, she had a really good ending in Face the Raven, and then it just got ruined and completely unwritten 2 episodes later. And it's not, my point is, it's not teaching anyone how to cope with death. Because that was the whole thing with Heaven Sent. The whole episode is about the Doctor coming to terms with Clara no longer being alive. And then the next episode he gets her back again and then wipes his memory. And you can't relate to that. You can't. But anyway, I'm not ranting about Hellbent. City Shark Jr. I feel like Doctor Who has more adult viewers than kids. But that might just be because on Comic-Con there are more teens and adults at the panels. And I'm an adult, so I obviously know more adult fans. Yeah, that's fair enough. But I do still stand by the fact that Doctor Who has more child viewers than adults. That's what I think, at least. I'd like to be proven wrong. In fact, I'd love it to be an equal split. Not just in ages, but genders as well. I think this series is quite well split. TM Martin, how would you like it if the Master returned as Missy in the Christmas special? P.S. Michelle Gomez is starring in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix and she is awesome. I'll be honest with... Oh, air in my mouth again. I'll be honest with you, TM Martin. I wouldn't want that in a nutshell. I think Michelle Gomez is done playing Missy, so I think that would be silly for her to suddenly start playing the role again when she said that she's finished with it. I think it's too soon as well. She only died at the end of series 10. so it ruins, again, literally what I've just been saying about undoing the notion of death. I don't think it will be that interesting either, hand on heart. Bearing in mind there's lots of new viewers watching the show at the moment, and a lot of them won't know who Missy is, so you would have to explain that to them. Philip Hawkins, don't worry, you're not the only one that gets the names Bradley Walsh and David Bradley confused. I did it several times while recording my review tonight. That's reassuring. Yeah, at least with a review you can edit around it. With a live video I'm stuck with what I say first time around, which is quite bad. Dr. Collectible, Dr. Blue, do you think this episode was just a filler episode and there is going to be better episodes further in Series 11? Interesting question. Yes and no. I think filler in terms of plot, because I don't think anything that happened in this episode will have ramifications further along the line. But at the same time, it is a story you need to have, because, well, if you take this episode out of the series, you would have the Doctor going from trying to get everyone back home to her suddenly referring to them as companions and them being happy to travel with her. So you needed this grounded episode in present day Sheffield, just to follow up on threads from the opener, basically Grace being dead, and Yaz's family. It was not necessary to see them, but it helped expand her character, I think. Like, loads of people were complaining before that she had no backstory, and hopefully they'll be happy now that we've seen more of her family. Yeah, and as for the other thing you were saying, even though I think the episodes we've had so far are quite good, I do hope we've got really good episodes to come, because I would love there to be stiff competition for Rosa, for the top spot of best episode of Series 11. Because at the moment, for me at least, Rosa is a clear winner. And I just want there to be at least one episode that comes along, blows everyone's socks off, and splits the polls when it comes to voting. Motorhawk 2, I think it would be good for the BBC to drop the Daleks and other reoccurring character names from the story titles to make it more of a surprise. Yes. Yeah. So if the Daleks were to make a surprise appearance this series, it'll be really good if the word Dalek isn't mentioned in the episode title, because obviously that would be a dead giveaway. Yeah, it's fine for episodes like tonight's one, because Arachnids in the UK, it's not a villain like the Daleks or the Cybermen that fans will know. It's just an everyday creature that we find, and it summarises the episode quite well, so that's fine. But yeah, having something like Rise of the Cybermen, Rise of the Daleks, Return of the Daleks, Return of the Sontarans, whatever, that is a dead giveaway, so you do need to pick your episode titles very carefully. Blue Tail Gang, which monster would you want back, not just for a Christmas special? Nice question. Again, it's one that puts me on the spot. Oh, I don't know. I'm looking for inspiration. You know what? I'm going to say I would really like it if we have a classic villain return that's never been in the new series. So just like when the Zygons made their first appearance in the new series in the 50th anniversary special, just like when the Ice Warriors first appeared in Series 7, I'd like another classic creature to make a brand new appearance in the new series. I think that would be cool. I always find it interesting to see these revamped looks of classic villains, and it makes a nice change from having the Daleks, Cybermen, Sontarans, Ice Warriors and whatnot. Yeah, so I think that will be my answer to that question. How far behind am I? 8 minutes. Philip Hawkins, so far I've been showing my daughter more tame past episodes. The Adipose is one of her favourites, but she has been watching all of this series with me apart from this episode. Oh, that's good. good choice that she likes Partners in Crime, because that's a very fun episode. Um, to be honest with you, Philip, if you're still here, I'm surprised that she's watching it at this age. I have no idea how quickly a child's mind develops, but I would have thought you would have to be at least 4 years old to sort of understand the program. Maybe she is intelligent enough to understand it. But yeah, 3 is surprisingly young to be watching the show, at least in my view. But I've never had kids, and I don't recall my brother being that young because we're quite close in age. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. So I'm just trying to find something I can respond to. Joel Johnson, Grace won't come back, Graham will die. That'll be a more satisfying yet tragic conclusion, and they can still have a reunion between Graham and Grace. You know what? You're probably right there. Yeah, if a character was to die, it probably would be Graham. Because I bet Chris Chibnall knows that he's a very popular character. I think he knows that the British public loves Bradley Walsh as a person. And yeah, I think from a storytelling point of view, it will be a very, as you say, tragic and satisfying conclusion if he gets to be reunited with Grace as well. Oh, that is sad though. I don't want Graham to die. Ewan Houtcrow has just tuned in. Enjoyed the episode tonight. Good to know. Please do vote in the polls. Up there this time. Yeah, if you haven't already. Tia Martin, do you consider the 13th Doctor to be a Time Lord or a Time Lady? I prefer Time Lord. Difficult question. I think I would have to say Time Lord as well. Mainly because I don't think I've watched any classic Doctor Who episodes that have featured Time Ladies in, like Romana. So for me, whenever I've seen Gallifreyans, they have always been Time Lords. And also to me, well, obviously I can say this because I'm not a woman, at least I hope I'm not, but I don't think it's offensive to say that a woman can be a lord. I know it doesn't exactly make sense because typically you have lords for men, lady for lady, lady for woman. But yeah, no, I just think call the 13th Doctor a Time Lord still. Tia Martin thinks this was a filler episode. Hayden 2012, I think that Grace will be found in another dimension and see Graham reunited with Grace. Yeah, see, even that undoes death for me, because the fact is you've still got someone alive who is practically like Grace. Sure, it might be a parallel universe version of her or an alternate dimension, or they could bring in an android version. I don't know, there's loads of ideas they could do. But for me, just having a character that's like Grace, alive and well, just undoes the fact that she's dead, and I wouldn't be happy with that. Joel Johnson, I hope Graham's air in my lungs, sorry. I hope Graham's cancer doesn't show up in the last episode. I hope if that's the reason for his departure, they at least start to show signs of it debilitating him. Is that a word, or is it debilitating? Oh, I can't even say it. Pretend I said that perfectly. Yeah, so now cancer is a very difficult thing to deal with in a show like Doctor Who. You have to tread a very fine line with that, and I think it would be a bit too brutal or disturbing maybe to show the cancer, if it returns, start to affect him. So I personally wouldn't want to see that. I don't think kids would want to see that. But yeah, you raise an interesting point. It could come back and he could say, look, I want to spend my last few months on Earth. But then that seems out of character for me, I think. I don't know. I think, to be honest, if Graham is to die, I'd like him to die fighting, not because of cancer. I think that would be too sad for people. Dr. Collectible, Dr. Blue, your Slithines on your shelf inspired me to buy a Slithine, which triggered a chain reaction. In the last 2 weeks, I bought over 20 figures. Oh, nice. I'm so glad they've inspired you to buy figures. Hopefully you're not poor after buying 20 figures now. But nice. Yeah, figures are cool to have. They were actually the first... No, not the first. I haven't actually got that many figures myself. I've got those Slithine. I've got the Weeping Angel that I've shown off before. I've got a tiny Ice Warrior. I've got a Dalek. That used to be my brother's, but then he was willing to give it away. I've got a Silence, one of my favourite villains. Look at that. Oh, so scary. And I've got the good old John Sim Master, which is quite blurry there. There we go. And all of these I only just started getting in the past 2 years. I don't know why I never got figures before. Oh, I've also got 10th Doctor in a drawer down there, but I won't get it out now. But nice. So already you've beaten me in having more figures. Oh, that's cool. Oh, I've laid them out quite nicely there. Can you see them all? Yeah. Impressive. I didn't even know I was doing that. I was just putting them on the table. Right, so I'll start to wrap up in a mo. Jack Perry thinks Grace's death was forced. Fair enough. I don't think it was forced. I think it came out of nowhere and was very unexpected. Yeah, and I think I mentioned this before in my live stream for episode 1. Because I knew Grace was a recurring character, I was especially shocked that she died in episode 1, and that's what then got me thinking about how she'll return in this episode and later ones. Philip Hawkins, my daughter is almost 4, and I doubt she gets everything. Sometimes she gets distracted, but that's fine, just trying to foster a love of the show. She constantly asked where the Doctor has gone when she's not on. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, that's good that she understands some of it, though. Oh, but bless her. Blue Tail Gang, what is your favourite way Grace could return? I answered this earlier. If she was to return, it would be by there being a story where they go back in time and encounter a slightly younger version of Grace, and then Ryan and Graham have this issue of they can speak to her, but they can't ever tell her that she's going to die in a couple of months. I think that would be a really interesting story. Tim Martin, Dr. Blue, you hope you're not a girl. You sound like Matt Smith when he regenerated as the 11th Doctor. Recall he was so relieved to not be a girl after checking all his body parts. Yeah. Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with being a girl, don't get me wrong. It's just, that would be awkward if after 21 years I only now found out that I wasn't male. Yeah, that would be a lot of things that I'd have to be educated on. Jack Parry, can you show us the Silence? I don't think you showed it. I'll show it again. I'm not sure if you sent that before I showed it off. But there we go. So the Silence is definitely one of my favourite figures. Apparently they're quite rare to come by now. And I got this at York Comic Con last year. And I got it off a nice guy who gave me a discount because I was wearing a 12th Doctor cosplay, basically. Hayden 2012 has a Big Chief Studios Matt Smith Doctor and Peter Capaldi figure. They are awesome and can recommend them. Cool, I'll try and look into them. Uh, I've only now understood Jack Parry's joke about showing the silence. And there was me awkwardly showing it off again when actually you were just making a joke. Oh dear. Dave H, did you make all the points you wanted to say from your list? I'm not sure, so thank you very much for bringing it up. I will do that now before wrapping it up. I think I did. To be honest, I didn't have that much I wanted to say about the episode this week. I was much more interested in knowing what you guys thought. So, yeah, we spoke about the time vortex. I thought it was very trippy. And Philip Hawkins and a few others mentioned about the different pathways, and I quite like that as well. One of my highlights of the episode was basically all the scenes that had Graham in them. He did really good acting with his eyes, getting all teary-eyed, and just how expressionate his face is. And I just loved how he had visions of Grace. I thought that was really well handled. I especially liked how he wants to use travelling with the Doctor to get over his grief. I think that's really relatable and really nice. What I didn't mention was I thought the CGI was very good in this episode. I really liked the spider effects. I felt like they were actually there in the scene. I thought the episode was creepy. I found it very creepy, especially when you had the people who were cocooned, ready to be food. And the spider, the huge spider coming out the bath as well. No, that's a no-go. I liked how we got more backstory for Yaz as well, and we got to meet her family. Even though we didn't learn much about them, it was nice to see them all the same. I really liked the final scene where Yaz, Graham and Ryan become companions and they give their reasons for wanting to travel. And I've just mentioned about Graham's grief. I thought that was especially nice. And I like the final shot of all four of them putting their hands on the control and pulling the lever. I've kind of mentioned this, but not explicitly. So what was quite interesting about this episode is a lot of my uni friends watched it, and after finishing the episode, I went on Facebook, and they'd all sent me messages wondering what my opinion on the episode was, which was quite nice. I don't know whether they watched this episode because they knew giant spiders were in it, or whether it was the fact that I'd met up with them yesterday and was raving about how good Doctor Who was last week. But either way, they watched it at least, which was nice. And yeah, considering most of them did not watch it at all whilst we were at uni, this is a big step up. Yeah, so that was nice. It got people talking, and it actually scared a few of my friends as well. And that links in with whoever was saying earlier about this episode actually scaring adults. So that was a big plus. And yeah, this was mentioned earlier. I'm happy that this is another episode where characters are dying. And I think I've got a minimum threshold of 3 characters need to die in every episode for me to be happy. And this episode just hits that. Now on to the dislikes. There wasn't that much I disliked, but there was a couple of things. So I said right at the start of the video, with the Chris Chibnall episodes, I do feel like there's something a bit off with them. And I think, at this moment in time, I think it's the writing, pacing and plotting, which actually is basically just the writing, isn't it? Yeah, I just feel like his episodes aren't as interesting as they could be. So that's something I keep noticing, and hopefully he improves on it for next week's episode, because that's another Chibnall episode. Loads of people mention this point, the anticlimactic ending and everything concerned with it, like how the giant spider was handled, the fact we didn't even see the other spiders, how they were disposed of, the potential plot hole in the spiders that were in homes around Sheffield. Did they come back to the hotel, or are they still out there wreaking havoc? I mentioned how the Doctor didn't react to Robertson the way she should have done. I just felt like she was too tolerant of him when she should have argued with him a bit more. This is something I also mentioned. I'm kind of disappointed that the spiders weren't alien or linked in with the ones from Planet of the Spiders or were conscious. I was kind of disappointed that they were just bigger versions of the spiders that we encounter in everyday life. And this is just a very minor point to end things on. It's definitely me nitpicking, but I felt like there was too many characters by the end of the story. There was the Doctor, Yaz, Ryan, Graham, Yaz's mum, Robertson, Jazz the scientist, 7 people trapped in the hotel and dealing with the spiders. And I just felt like that's too many characters. In most episodes, you would have killed off a lot of people by then, and you would be left with the Doctor, the companion, and a couple of extra characters, and you would have no more than 5 people, whereas this had 7. And I just felt like it was too many characters to handle. So yeah, that's everything on my list that I've finally gone through 2 hours through the video. Very quickly, I'll see if there's any comments here that I can respond to. Rob Littlewood was disappointed with the episode. They hate the way that all white men, with the exception of Graham, are bad, evil, or act like a coward. This appears to be an agenda with the series of Doctor Who. Best first Doctor episode has to be the 11th hour. Yeah, so someone else said this. I'm being optimistic myself, and I'm hoping we'll get a variety of villains throughout the rest of the series, and they won't all be white males, but we'll have to wait and see. Oh yes, final poll results as well. Thank you very much, TM Martin. I'll quickly go through the rest of the messages. But actually, I will have to wrap up soon because my phone is running out of charge. Oh, P.S. I find your audience is very appreciative of the new series. I've been on other streams/sites and people can be brutal as to criticism. Oh, well, that's good. That everyone's being tolerant most of the time. Motorhawk 2, what is the little figure on the shelf? Is it a Lego Dalek? Well spotted. Oh, wow, that is very well spotted. It's not a Lego Dalek, it's a plastic Dalek. God knows where I got it from. But I've got it, nonetheless. I've also got River with a gun to her face, because you probably can't see, but they've printed the eye on her forehead rather than on the actual eye, so that's a bit awkward. And then I've also got a hand bot. There we go. That's a random thing I didn't think we'd be doing, showing off figures. Right. Oh, I'd love to respond to all these comments, guys, but I really need to be wrapping up, I'm afraid. Oh, thank you, Dr. Collectible. I look forward to this live stream as much as I look forward to the new episodes of Doctor Who. Big fan of your channel. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. That's really nice. And it's people like you that keep me going, doing these live streams. And the same goes for everyone that's watching and has been watching for a while. Thank you very much for all your messages. I do really appreciate it. Jack is going. Goodbye. The spiders reminded Hayden 2012 of Harry Potter. Yep, same with me. I was worried we would get a spider that's as big as Aragog. So I'm glad. I think the spiders were slightly smaller than that. Joel Johnson, I'm afraid I can't really help out with that Photoshop thing because I do need to be wrapping up. Hopefully other people have answered your question. Quickly have a drink. Bluetail Gang, I love your streams. Not many of my friends watch it, and this is a good way to speak about it. Really glad you're enjoying it. And that's partly why I'm doing this, so that anyone who hasn't got many people to talk to the episode about it can feel like they can. And I must admit, I'm in that boat as well, really. I know I said my friends have watched this week's episode, but prior to that, not many of my friends watch the show anymore. And we certainly don't speak about it as much as we used to do, which is a shame, really, because it's really good to discuss the show with other fans. So yeah, I do hope you guys get something out of this and feel like you are able to contribute and enjoy voting in the polls as well. Again, final plug for the polls. Vote in it because I'll do a final run through of the results in a mo. Oh, I'm having to skip so many good questions and comments. How far behind am I? There we go. Okay. What was it I just skipped? Hayden 2012. I know it's a bit early, but what would you like to see in future episodes in season 12? So very quickly. Oh god, yeah, very quickly because my phone is literally going to die any second now. Captain Jack is a character I'd love to return, and not 2012, season 12. I'd love him to appear in. Apart from that, you know what? I'm really not fussed. I think I would like more classic villains to come back. I wouldn't mind seeing the Zygons again. Dare I say it, but I probably wouldn't mind if the companions all changed around next year. So maybe have 3 companions, but have one of the current companions either die or choose to leave, and then bring a new one in next year. I'd quite like that. Right, okay. Right, chat is going off. God, 2 hours and 15 minutes. I really didn't think I'd be going for this long. Right, so final look at the poll. Move all those figures out the way. So, the first question, how would you rate Arachnids in the UK? The winner, with 56% of the vote, was I liked it, followed by it was okay, with 32% of the vote. Then it was I didn't like it, with 10% of the vote. But what I find most interesting about this is no one that voted in the poll loved it or hated it, at least in what I can see here. So it's all a middle response, essentially. Which Series 11 episode is the best? 64% of people agree with me that Rosa is the best one. Second place is the Ghost Monument. That I find surprising. I would have thought most people would put that at the bottom. Then it's Arachnids in the UK with 11%. Then it's the series opener with 8%. Very surprised at that. Then, God, this is still a very mixed answer. Which Series 11 enemy is the best so far? The winner, the joint winner, with just under a third of the votes, is Krasko and the Giant Spiders. Then it's Tim Shaw, last week's winner, with 22%. And then it's the Remnants with 12%. So, you know what? I didn't expect that. I think when I was setting up the poll for this week, I thought Tim Shaw would win again. And I think I assumed the Giant Spiders would be second. But I didn't expect them to be tying with Krasko. So that's really interesting. And then the final question, which spider featuring story is your favourite? The winner with 53% of the vote is the Runaway Bride. Again, something I'm very surprised at. Then with 20%, it's today's episode, Arachnids in the UK, followed by, in joint last place, Planet of the Spiders and Kill the Moon. So again, the results are quite interesting. I like that. I do enjoy doing these polls, so thank you very much for voting in them. It is interesting to see what everyone thinks. Right, and my phone is, yeah, it's very close to dying, so I'll very quickly see what's being said. Cool. Philip Hawkins would like to see one swap out with companions, but not a complete start again. Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I'm the same. Right, so, as ever, thank you very much, guys, for watching, especially to those of you who were kind enough to message away your thoughts, voting in the polls, and those of you who have stuck around for, I don't know, God, if any of you stuck around from the beginning, well done. That's commitment right there. But yeah, I don't mind how long people stay tuned for, as long as you enjoy it whilst you're here. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. And that's all I wanted to say, really. So I will be back at the same time next week. at 9 p.m. GMT, not BST. So if you're in America or anywhere else, Google the time translations, and hopefully we won't have the same mess up next week. And I will see you then. Bye.